Well, hey there team, welcome back to the channel and welcome to an overview of Ixion. A bit out of season, but we're right on time for the anniversary. In fact, this week, 2 years ago, Ixion came out. So I figured I'd celebrate and do a bit of a revisit. People enjoyed at least talking about Calypso Protocol. Maybe we can actually do these worth your time, worth your money type games at a higher pace, maybe a couple more a day, if that includes revisiting classics that I'm much more familiar with. I'd be curious to hear what you have to say. So Ixion, one of my favourite games of definitely with the last couple of years, that's for sure. I'm a huge fan of Frostpunk, very specifically Frostpunk 1. Not that there's anything really wrong with Frostpunk 2, but that's a whole other conversation. But Frostpunk really sort of broke onto the scene as this kind of difficult, narrative-heavy colony builder. Hadn't really seen anything like it, hadn't really seen anything since, at least until Ixion came along, and replaying it today a bit just to be familiar and go down memory lane, it makes me realize that I count this honestly in my heart as an equal to Frostpunk. If Frostpunk is more of a sort of period piece history type example, this is the sci-fi equivalent. And so if for some reason you don't know about Ixion and this is your first time hearing it and you have an affinity with Frostpunk, again, one of my favorite games of all time, easily, then on that recommendation alone, you should go and get this. It's worth it, full price, absolutely. It is developed by Bulwark Studios and published by Casino Games, and that team up last happened before this on 40k Mechanicus, another fantastic game in its own right, really sort of does something different with the turn-based tactics scene. I mean, I don't want to turn this into a Mechanicus video, but that was a bit of a trailblazer in its own right, and it's only really built more and more cult momentum, in no small thanks to the epic, churchy soundtrack in it. A lot of your favorite YouTubers, especially around the time, would have used that as background music. But in the pursuit of one-upping himself, the composer for this, I believe it's David Guillemette. I don't really know much about this dude other than the fact that he did the soundtrack for both this and Mechanicus, and they both slap. Instant classics. And I don't know if he's really done much else. My speculation, he's just some random staffer from inside Bulwark Studios, and they said, oh, you want to make the soundtrack? And he said, oh yeah, let's go for it. But, you know, that's my own urban legend to spread around. Regardless, soundtrack bangs, the entire game is just an excellent follow-up. So look, what is it? Well, Frostpunk in space is a pretty good launching off point. I don't want to really spoil much of the narrative beats because it takes a pretty early twist turn. You could call it the pilot episode of a series to set it up. And I think a lot of the marketing material, like videos going around promoting the game, kind of did spoil that twist, but I somehow avoided it. I knew the pedigree. I knew that I loved this studio and it looked great, and I went in blind and it absolutely blew my socks off. So again, if I haven't given you fair warning enough, not that I'm going to overtly try and spoil anything, but still, pick it up, go in blind. Otherwise, reminisce with me. But the setup from the out is that you're part of a sort of edge of future mankind's sort of first steps into space proper, trying to explore the stars. We've had a breakthrough technology in the Vol engine, which is being sort of prototyped by the station that you're an administrator of, which is the Tiqqun station, all part of this DOLOS system. They've got their stand-in eccentric billionaire Tony Stark come Elon Musk type dude, except with a much bigger dab of Silicon Valley hippie pretentiousness. Kind of got fake adverts and all that talking about saving Mother Earth, and it's very cool. It plays it straight face. It's well done, actually. But the idea is that this is essentially a black box scientific narrative component in that it's going to make it so we can jump and travel to other systems, right? And from there, that would be the stepping stones into going beyond Earth. So you're essentially doing the test run on this engine, and the prologue sets that up. You've got this station that's quite novelly circular and almost like spokes on a wheel in a way. You've got these sections. You've only got one in the beginning, and through the course of the game, you're going to want to expand and open them up through this rotating platform. But it's all fairly self-contained as well. Like, you've got these three layers of management. One is the internal one, and you have to adhere to this kind of curved grid, but it's still rectangular. You'll see it in the footage. And then at the F2 level, it goes external, and that's things like building the engine as part of your on-roads, but also things like building out solar panels as the power source for the ship as it requires, and also doing like extended repairs. And then beyond that, you've got the F3 view, which is more the system level, and you can dispatch ships to do things from mining to moving goods back to the station to be processed and used. And then you've got sort of science vessels going out and doing these kind of choose your own adventure little things to gather research and bits and pieces of narrative. And so that's pretty much the setup. You test start this engine. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to realize that something goes catastrophically wrong, and you essentially find yourself in a scenario not dissimilar to something like Battlestar Galactica or even Star Trek Voyager, right? Kind of having to trek across the galaxy in search of a new home in a way. And I think that's enough without giving away bigger than that. But it's a really wonderful treading water experience. Like, the pressure's not overwhelming. I think it's appropriate, but at the same time, it's definitely not easy. Again, I think it shares some similarities of that kind of balancing it perfectly, like Frostpunk. The first time you play Frostpunk for the main scenario, and it's tough, and if you do get through, which you probably will, it will be by the skin of your teeth by the end of it. If anything, this is a little bit more longer form, I guess. You do go system hopping. The story is a bit more developed, I guess. When you compare it to, say, something like Frostpunk, which it does have that core scenario that goes for many hours, but that's sort of one and done in a way. Anyway, I don't want to over-compare them too much, but it makes the most sense to me. Anyway, look, I actually don't really need to talk much more than it, other than to say I've laid out the genre. You know, who's going to appeal to? Should be everyone that likes good games. I highly recommend it. Easily one of my top games to recommend. And I want to leave some mystique in there as well. So if you do, drop me a comment if this convinces you to pick it up and check it out, because I don't actually want to give it away. It's still only a couple of years old. Statute of limitations, I think, still stands. So I would highly encourage checking this out. Go in as blind as you can, and then thank me later, I guess. Anyway, team, I just leave it there for the time being, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.